It is easy from the outside to look at poverty and see a series of personal failings. Society often treats it as a moral flaw or a simple lack of education. But that view ignores the sheer physical reality of living in a low-resource environment. People in deep poverty frequently make decisions that seem counterproductive to anyone looking at a spreadsheet. They might take on high-interest predatory loans, prioritizing an immediate, urgent need for survival over long-term financial stability. When policymakers see these decisions, their first instinct is usually to offer basic financial literacy classes. Yet these standard informational interventions consistently fail to change behavior on the ground. The reason is a phenomenon researchers call cognitive bandwidth. Managing daily relentless scarcity acts like background software, eating up all your mental RAM. The continuous mental weight of figuring out how to feed your family today drains the processing power needed for everything else. Poverty operates as a heavy, continuous cognitive tax that actively distorts a person's decision-making process. This cognitive drain inflicts a literal, physical toll on the human brain. In a state of persistent scarcity, your body enters a biological emergency state. A constant flood of stress hormones, specifically cortisol, alters normal human physiology. Over time, this constant cortisol bath physically delays the normal maturation processes inside a developing brain. Researchers have documented a measurable reduction of gray matter in the hippocampus and the frontal lobes. These are the specific regions responsible for executive function, impulse control, and memory formation. Chronic stress structurally constrains the architecture of the brain, making the biological act of long-term planning incredibly difficult to execute. When the prefrontal cortex is suppressed by this physiological stress, one of the first mental capacities to break down is metacognition. Metacognition is the ability to think about your own thinking. It is the critical skill required to accurately recognize your own limitations and realize when you are making a mistake. This graph shows how that biological deficit plays out in real life. Without metacognition, individuals often fall into the Dunning-Kruger effect. They become trapped in the first stage of this cognitive bias, unconscious incompetence. They have very low skill, but experience a severe spike of maximum overconfidence. This creates a double burden. A person lacks the expertise to make good decisions, and simultaneously lacks the biological capacity to realize those skills are missing. The very environment causing bad decisions effectively hides the error from the decision maker. Poverty creates a self-sealing biological blind spot. When you combine the daily depletion of cognitive bandwidth with this metacognitive blind spot, the effects multiply. This collision intensifies present bias. The urge to secure short-term survival dominates when the brain cannot accurately self-evaluate long-term risk. This diagram outlines the academic model of how this happens. Poverty, poor decisions, neurodevelopmental constraints, and meta-ignorance lock together into a single framework. Notice how chronic stress moves directly into neurodevelopmental constraints, which feeds into meta-ignorance. Each variable amplifies the next in a vicious loop. Because these elements function as a synergistic trap, treating only one symptom will never stop the cycle. Traditional, single-focus poverty policies are structurally doomed to fail. Providing information or a temporary cash transfer fails to create long-term change because these interventions address only a single node of a multi-layered biological loop. This loop also creates a specific vulnerability to the digital attention economy. Platforms often use high-arousal disinformation to capture the attention of those whose cognitive bandwidth is already depleted by the stress of scarcity. To actually break the cycle, we have to look at historical successes like the Indian state of Kerala. Over several decades, they disrupted this trap through cumulative, multi-generational institutional reforms, combining health, education, and social protection. True disruption requires a dual-pronged approach. You have to simultaneously relieve the neurobiological stress of scarcity, while providing structural, community-level scaffolding to rebuild metacognitive skills. Poverty operates as a structural condition that physically rewires human perception. To solve it, we must dismantle the biological pressure cooker creating these blind spots, rather than punishing people for the symptoms it produces.